All right, we're jumping in here. All right. Cool, cool, cool. So, let's see real quick. All right, guys. So, for anybody watching live, we are going to be answering a few questions on how we can best help you with your data career. The questions are in the chat. Let's get the party started. Okay. So, what I want to talk about today is 25 things that we learned in 2025 that I think would be very valuable for data professionals. I'm going to start my little walking pad in the meantime. Okay. So basically, the way this live is going to work is that if you have a question that you want to ask, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. If you don't have a question, you can just kind of hear me yap. And the goal really is for me to make this a YouTube video that I can use later anyways. But I figured if I'm going to shoot a YouTube video, and probably a long one, then I might as well give everybody the opportunity to ask questions based on their own current situation. All right. So let's jump into this. So the first thing I learned in 2025, and the biggest thing that I think people need to take away, is that fear is the biggest cost that people don't actually realize is happening. Okay. And so I'll put that as number one in the chat. And it's very simple. It's that fear costs millions of dollars. And so I'll give you an example because this might be you in the data space. We've talked to over 100,000 people looking to improve their data careers. And out of those 100,000 people, probably 90% of them have been unhappy in their job for longer than 2 years. So, like, think about that for a second. It's like you're at your job and you're unhappy for more than 2 years. And the thing is, you might have been at your job for like 5 years, knowing you're underpaid, but you're finally unhappy for the last 2 years. And so, what most people don't realize is that the opportunity cost of not doing anything is actually very, very expensive. And so, I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you're making 100 grand a year, but you have 10 years of experience so that you know you could be making 200 grand a year. That 100 grand delta is the cost of not doing anything. And that cost is there every single year. And so that adds up, right? If you've been there for 2, 3 years, that adds up to 300 grand. Now, think about if you were to stay there for another 2 to 3 years, which is basically what happens at this point. People kind of hit this inflection point of like, do I do nothing? Do I do something? Well, if you don't do anything and you incur those 2 years again, then that becomes another 200, 300 grand. So now you've wasted 600 grand doing nothing. But here's the thing. If you would have done something 2 years ago, you also would have gotten raises. You also would have gotten promotions, right? You also would have gotten something that also keeps compounding so that you're earning more over time. And so now that 400, 600 grand is actually starting to compound to 7, 8, 900 grand. Here's what's also crazy. Over time, the ability for you to land a higher paying role goes down. So let me explain. Not only are you giving up the opportunity cost of not doing anything, but let's just say like you're looking down 5 years down the line and you're like, okay, I need to catch up, I need to finally upskill, what happens is you now need to upskill twice. You need to upskill for the role and the skills that you are going for, but you actually also need to upskill and get ahead by learning the things that nobody knows. Because the best way to get a job that's going to pay you more than what you're currently getting paid, is actually by being overqualified. And so, for example, if you're a data analyst, but you knew you should have been the data engineer, you might learn data engineering, but then you might have to learn AI in order to actually get a competitive chance at landing a higher paying role. And so the reason I bring this up is because now you have to learn twice, which means it's actually going to take a lot longer than you think to land a higher paying role. And that's just kind of how the market also always works, right? You're competing with people who are always upskilling. And so I just want to bring that up because I don't think people realize how costly it is to not do anything. And the number one reason people don't do anything is because of fear. And I'm speaking from experience because I used to work at Amazon thinking to myself, I need to leave. I need to go to a place that's going to pay me more. But I knew that there was risk. What if I joined a startup that failed? What if I joined another company that fired me right away? What if I wasn't able to live up to the expectations of that new role? What if that new company was mean? What if I didn't, like the mission or the place or the culture, right? Like there's so much fear when it comes to job hopping, I guess, if you want to call it that. But that's fine. The fear is fine. The reframe, though, is how expensive is it to let your fear win? So I think that's something that is not talked about enough. And again, like your job has no incentive to tell you this stuff, by the way. Like, why would they tell you this? Right? Like your company doesn't want you to leave. So the fear, and again, it happens at a very subconscious level, so you might not accept it, but the fear is actually very, very costly. By the way, for the people who are tuning in, thank you, Koshik. If you look at the questions in the chat and if you want to participate, I'm going to be yapping and filming this YouTube video, but if you also want your questions answered, put them in the chat. I'm here to help you. Okay, let's go to number 2. I think the second lesson I learned for data professionals in 2025 is skepticism is overrated, but research is underrated. So, for example, the amount of people that have just accepted, I'm not going to upskill or learn anything new because AI is going to take over the world. It's like, cool. You're skeptical. You're skeptical that learning anything new is useful. But like, how about doing some research? Right? How about just looking at the job reports? Seeing that data engineers is literally the number one highest trending job over the next decade. Right? Like it is the number one in-demand job that companies cannot find people for, even more than AI. How about doing some research as to like what people outside of your friend circle are making, right? I can't tell you how many times I meet somebody new and they're like, yeah, but I don't think I can make 200 grand. Like my friends, like they all make 130 and it's like, it's not possible. And it's like, you're going to base your decision based off of your friend circle and nothing else. And then you call yourself a data person. And to me, I'm like, what? Like that makes zero sense. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because everybody takes pride in being skeptical, especially us data folks, because we like to think we're analytical. We're gonna question everything and dissect everything, and it's cool. Like you should be skeptical about everything. But in that skepticism, you should balance it out with research. And so, if I had to say number 2, the second lesson I think is going to be most valuable for data professionals moving forward is be skeptical, but research. Because one without the other is just overrated. And again, we've all heard this term. I'm gonna include some typos in the chat, but we've all heard this term like trust but verify, trust but verify. It's like cool. Well, if we're gonna trust but verify, then actually do the verification part, right? Or if we're gonna do not trust but verify, then actually do the verification part. And so again, number two, don't take so much pride in being skeptical. Like I know us analytical folks likes to question everything, but it's if it hasn't helped you land a higher paying data role, then you should question whether that strategy actually works. Right? Can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, well, I'm skeptical. I'm like, cool, you've been stuck at your same job for 20 years. So how about we try a different strategy? Just think about that. Number three, free is expensive. Ooh. Anybody who sells boot camps, courses, anything like that, they will tell you the same thing over and over again. When we look at our stats of the people who have put in the most effort, the people who want free or who sign up for free are never the people that actually put in the effort. And I think that that is actually very interesting because it is the people who negotiate the most, it is the people who expect the most for the least amount that constantly are the ones that are not actually taking advantage of what they said they would take advantage of. So free is actually very expensive. And it's why like 40% of the people we talk to are literally like, yeah, I've been trying to do this on my own. And we're like, yeah, what have you tried? And it's like Coursera and Udemy and Code Academy. And it's like, cool. Well, have you gotten the job you wanted? And they say no. And it's like, cool. So do you think that it was actually free? If you wasted all your time, isn't your time very valuable? And then they kind of slowly start to realize like, maybe it wasn't actually free. Right? It's like when people are like, Facebook is free. It's like, no, it's not. They have your data, right? And Coursera is not free. They take your time. And so free is actually very expensive. It's just most people don't realize it because you're either going to pay with time or money, and you can always make more money, but you can't get time back. That leads me to number four. The number fourth brutal lesson I hope people learn is blaming the market is easy. Yourself, not so much. The amount of people that I hear say, hey, it's not the right time for me to upskill. The market's bad right now. I have heard this every day for the last 10 years. And there are people that continuously get a pay raise year over year because they either job hop, get a promotion, get a raise, or literally just switch industries and get a 30, 50, 80% raise. And there have been people in the last 10 years that have stayed exactly stuck, right? You guys have that friend that's always like, oh, US dollar is going to crash any moment now. Or, hey, everything's going to go to shit. There's going to be a recession. Or, hey, the housing market is going to crash any day now. And it's been like 5 years and nothing's happened. And sure, when it does happen, they're going to be like, see, I told you. And it's like, well, a broken clock is also is twice right. Is a broken clock, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And so this is the brutal truth of like, if you want to say the market is bad, et cetera, and you want to blame your whole career and you being underpaid because of the market, then sure, go ahead. No one's going to come save you. Nobody's going to come save you. Because I've been hearing that for the last 10 years, and there's still people that go through our academy, get a 30, 80, 20, 200. The most we've gotten is 3X, by the way. 3X raise in 1, 2, 3 quarters worth of time. And again, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. You have to put in the work. And I'm not saying it's easy. You have to put in a lot of work. But blaming the market, I've seen that excuse before COVID, after COVID, during COVID, when the stock market was going up, which it is now. I still hear that excuse before AI, after AI, during AI. I've heard that in and out. But you have to control what you can control. And the thing is, the worst market I have seen actually is COVID. And even then, that lasted for like 3 months. And then companies started hiring a ton as well. Okay, so one of the questions, Coach, it goes, how to practice Python for data engineering. You do need some leak code, specifically beginner and medium level. By the way, I'm on a treadmill. Someone's wondering why I'm swaying so much. But practice beginner and intermediate leak code for Python. You probably don't need hard, but it is going to be at a minimum those two. And then make sure you understand how Python works within like integration. So like if you use cloud and how tools integrate with one another and how you use Python to pass data through, you're going to need to understand that as well, but not for the interview though. I'd actually, if I were you, I'd focus on the first part because that's actually interview related. B said, how can I overcome the degree gap? I mean, aside from getting a degree, try to get a lower level entry role, like a data analyst. And when you apply, try to have a portfolio ready with a ton of projects so that you can show them, listen, I know I don't have a degree, but I know how to do this stuff. I've lived, breathed, slept all this stuff. Like this is all I do. And when they see that, which trust me, nobody does it, then you can potentially pass through the degree gap. Otherwise, I would potentially just get a degree, right? I think you can get a little creative with how you can do just one semester of a degree, enough to get a diploma or certificate, and then boom, you get that, and you should be good to go. Okay, let me keep going because we got another 25 to go through. The fifth lesson. More of the right thing works. What does that mean? More of the right thing works. I see a lot of people getting confused when it comes to how to actually approach getting the higher paying data role. So I'll give you an example. Someone might say, hey, I know some AWS. Should I start learning Snowflake, Databricks, Azure, GCP, et cetera, et cetera? And it's like, wait. It's not whether you know a little bit of AWS or not, it's how much do you know it. It exists on a continuum. And so if you ask yourself, well, how much AWS do I know? And then the answer is, maybe I only know 4 tools. It's like, cool, well, do you know enough to ace 100% of the interview questions? And if the answer is no, and you only know 20%, enough to ace 20% of the interview questions, then maybe the next question you have to ask yourself is, cool, how do I go deeper into AWS so that I can ace 80% of the interview questions? And I think that's really an important frame because your job isn't to show a resume that has 100 different tools. Your job is to feel as confident as you can that you're going to ace this interview that's in front of you because you only need one job. After you get one job, you can learn the rest of the tools on the job, right? You can get paid to learn, basically. And so to me, if you're doing the right thing, let's just say it's AWS, just do more of it. You don't have to go to Databricks. You don't have to go to Snowflake. You don't have to learn this tool just because you saw it on Reddit. Like it's not the most helpful thing. And so I'll give you an example. The other place I see this is when people have applied to 25 jobs and they've gone like 2 interviews. And they're like, oh, I failed at these 2 interviews. It must be my resume. And it's like, wait a second, why would it be your resume if you got the interviews? Maybe it's you need to get better at interviewing. And then in terms of getting more interviews, all you have to do is 10x your number of resumes. Because if you apply to 250 jobs and you get 20 interviews, you have more chances to get interviews or to get offers. And I think that that's such a simple, like, no duh, right? Apply to jobs, get 10% of interviews, and then just fill your interviews. But for some people, for some reason, people get so confused and they're like, oh, it must be X, it must be Y. I need to change up everything. I need to change up where I live. I need to change up my resume. And then they just end up like changing their whole strategy. And it's like, hold on, just slow down. You'll be okay. Like, make sure you're optimizing for the right thing. So more of the right thing still works. Okay, number 6, and this is a big one. Number 6 is a big one. Soft skills are the number one reason engineers fail interviews. The number one reason, guys. I cannot stress this enough. We have enough data to say this with confidence. Let me answer somebody's question here. I'm from India and I'm a freshman in data engineering. I know Python, SQL, AWS, Spark. Can I get an entry-level opportunity? there are less opportunities for freshers in the data domain. You have two options, kind of like I was saying before. You can either go for a data analyst position, because as somebody who knows data engineering, you're overqualified for that data engineer role or whatever, BIE role, business intelligence engineer role. Or you can learn something more, let's just say AI, right? Or ML, that makes you overqualified for the data engineer role. Especially when it comes to like entry-level folks, if you can show the company that you will give them more for less, meaning you know even more than what they're asking for, then you will stand out. Because here's the thing. If you only know data engineering and you're applying to a bunch of data engineering roles, then you, by default, only know what everyone else that is applying to that role also knows, right? It's like if I was applying to a data analyst role and you were applying to a data analyst role and you were both like, hey, I know SQL, why can't I get a job? It's like, cool, well, everybody in that application pool knows SQL. So you need something that's going to make you stand out. Okay, number 6. Soft skills are the number one reason engineers fail interviews. So we have enough data to know that this is the most anxiety-inducing round for engineers. And it makes sense, right? Like, how many of you watching this are probably thinking to yourself, oh, I know the technical stuff. I'm confident I can learn it. Oh, if you put a SQL problem in front of me, my brain, boom, right? Like the right side of your brain is so analytical that it can just go and figure out any coding thing. But if we asked you to express your feelings or come up with a story with emotion, right? This part of the brain shuts down a little bit. We're just not wired that way, right? As engineers, as people who are very high information people, right? But the thing is, as you get further into your career, soft skills are the things that are going to make you stand out as a more senior level executive. Communication skills, the ability to get business impact, business insights communicated to hundreds, if not thousands of people, right? Like other skills beyond just the technical stuff. And so I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to get your leadership, your communication, and for those of you that have accents, your accents, to get these 3 skills toned in as much as you can. Somebody said, if I was backend, can I get into data engineering? Yes, if you have any sort of tech tool or a tech background, you've got a good chance. All you got to do is learn SQL, Python, data modeling, system design, AWS, and behavioral questions. The good news is that you won't be intimidated by tech because you already have a tech background. So boom, you can do that even if you have a backend. If you only have a backend background. Somebody said, I'm trying to get better by learning AI, LLMs, and thank you so much for responding to my query. You got it, man. Will data engineering as a job exist until, see what I'm saying, guys? Someone's already asking, like, will it go extinct because blah, blah, blah. Look, if I ask you, will databases go extinct because, X tool came out, right? It's like, no, it's not that databases went extinct. It's just, it evolved, right? My guess is that ETLs and transforming data and building models, that will all look different. Does it mean it went extinct? No. It just means it looks different with different tools, with different best practices, and you have to just keep up. So I don't think extinct is the right word. Okay, number 7. Let's keep going. Number 7 thing I think lesson-wise is, can you be a DE without coding? And I think this one confuses people because, again, people like to think in absolutes, whether it's like, oh, data engineering requires coding, data engineering doesn't require coding. And the thing is, it's not binary. It's how much coding does data engineering needs, right? I know a bunch of data engineer roles that literally would code once a week because their job was mostly starting to kind of fall into the realm of an architect where they will do architecture work, a lot of meetings, stakeholder work. And I also know data engineers that had to basically be SQL monkeys, right? And so they had to code a lot. right? They were doing more work of a data analyst, right? Starting to build dashboards. And so this misconception of like, I don't want to become a data engineer because I don't want to code. It's like, well, it's not whether you code or not, it's how much code you do. And so just keep that in mind. Number 8, age. Age is another lesson I think people have continued to misunderstand. And yes, you need to know system design. Again, if you're a fresher, you might as well learn system design because it will just make you overqualified. So yes, learn system design, highly recommended. Listen, the thing about age is similar to the thought about, hey, it's the market, that's why I can't get a job. It's the same. It's the same thinking, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm too old to get the job. I'm too old for this. It's like, cool, way to blame something that is entirely outside of your control. That's how I see it. And I can't tell you how many like 45 to 50-year-olds are like, I'm too old for this. And I'm like, what? You still have like 20 years left in your career. How is that you think you're too old for this? But what they really don't want to say is, oh, I'm 45. I haven't upskilled in 20 years. So I got fired because my skills aren't good anymore. That's what they're scared to say when they say age. And so age is not actually the reason. The reason is because you haven't upskilled while other people are upskilling every year or two. Okay. And so, again, to answer the questions below, will AI replace data engineers? Again, if you look at one of the lessons I put at the above, right, it's don't be skeptical, just do your research because AI will play a role. It's not going to replace it, right? And what about leak code grinding? It's not as much as software engineers, probably 20% as opposed to software engineers like the opposite of that. It's the flip of that. So a little bit, but not so much. Leak code, just Python, just no Python. Okay, let's keep going. Number 9. Yeah, this is another one. I don't know why, but about 10% of people come to me and they're like, hey, is it a good idea for me to quit my job in order to learn what I have to learn? Eating breakfast here. So here's the thing. The only reason you want to quit your job in order to learn when you need to learn is because you are in a rush with an arbitrary timeline that you put into your head. Hey, I need to do this because I need to get a job in 3 months. It's like, why? Well, if you don't have a job, then cool. You did the sin of waiting to upskill when you were already laid off. No bueno. For everybody listening, that is the number one thing that I see people regret when they come to us. They're like, yeah, I should have done this a year earlier. Yeah. Now, if you do have a job, why do people typically put this arbitrary timeline? It's like, I need to do it in 90 days. It's like, well, just calling it how it is. People have no perception of how delaying gratification works. Meaning, like, if someone says, I need to do this in 90 days or I'm not doing it, they're basically saying, like, oh, if I don't do this in 90 days, it's not worth it. It's like, cool. But the alternative is that you just don't do anything and you get stuck in your same job for the next 5 years. And then it really wasn't worth it. And so this arbitrary timeline that people put in for themselves is just hurting you more than you think. Now, I'm all good for being held accountable, and you should tell yourself, I'm going to do this in 90 days because I really want to, push myself. Sure. But you don't need to quit your job. Just take a little longer to do it. It's fine. Right. And then for the person asking about AWS versus GCP, yeah, AWS is in 70% of the interviews that we apply to our clients for, because we apply on behalf of our clients. 70% of the interviews are AWS related. I think 20 is Azure, 10 is GCP. So if you want the highest chance and the highest net that you can cast when you're applying to jobs, go the AWS route. Okay. Number 10, lesson number 10. tool overwhelmness is destroying your chances before you even start. So how many times have you gone on Reddit, Stack Overflow, Blind, Coursera, YouTube, Code Academy? Like all of those have like 100 different tools in there. The problem with that is learning a new tool isn't correlated to actually passing the interview. And how do you actually get a job? It's by passing the interview. And so for those of you that are saying, I'm going to go learn on this by myself, blah, blah, like I can just use ChatGPT to learn. It's like, cool. But if you don't know what to ask it, then yeah, you can ask it, what do I need to learn in order to become a data engineer? The moment they list off 10 things, you're already wrong because you really only need to know like 4. And if out of those 10 things, let's just say 4 of them are accurate, the other 6 are going to take you two extra years to learn. And you never need to learn. And so the reason I'm saying that is because the skills you need isn't that hard. It's the knowing which skills that are actually the hard part. And so I'm going to talk more about this later. So I'm just going to keep going because I want to get through everything. But just remember that. Don't get so overwhelmed by trying to see what's online. My best recommendation is like go to a person who's actually a data engineer and just ask them what it is that a data engineer interview looks like. The interview is different than the skill set. Go for the interview. You'll get more clarity there. Ooh, this one's a good one. This one's a good one. I got more than 25, so I'm trying to figure out which 25 to do. Okay. Which companies pay 150K plus? There's a misconception around salaries that I need to talk about. Most of you are trying to figure out if you can actually make more money. And the first thing you do is go to something like Glassdoor. Guys, Glassdoor, like where you get your data, and again, we're data engineers, we should know this, where you get your data is super important. Because if you go to Glassdoor, they're taking the medium of people who have filled out that Glassdoor and who have not verified where they have worked. So let me explain. Levels.fyi is for engineers that have to verify that they work for a big tech company. Then you get to see their equity, their signing bonus, their salary. So the total compensation. Glassdoor is anybody that can go on and just put a number. This one, big tech engineers do it. This one, everybody does it without verification. Which one do you actually think has more accurate data? What's going to be LeetCode? Or sorry, levels.fyi. And so people will come to me and they're like, hey, I don't think I can make 200 grand as a data engineer. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because in Glassdoor, I saw that the medium is whatever, 160. And this is the medium. And the thing about that statement is like, well, number one, it shows me you haven't done your research. Number two, it shows me you don't understand the big tech world, which again, levels.fyi is the best place to actually go and see what other people are making, right? Because it's in real time, you can see the data points as they come in. But more importantly, that statement of like, hey, I can't make 200 grand because the medium is 160 does not make sense to me. Because you are by default saying, hey, I want to be average. I want to be the medium. And it's like, cool. The people who are medium weight in the United States are 20 pounds overweight. So if you go to a personal trainer and you're like, I don't think I can get a 4-pack or a 5-pack because the medium weight is 20% overweight. It's like, what? So you're just ruling it out based on this inaccurate data that's skewed? Like the whole point of you upskilling and trying to get better, if you're watching this especially, that must be you, right? Is to try to be in the top 10%, the top 20%. Try to be one of those people that make multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in their career. And so like this misconception of like, hey, there are no companies out there paying 200 grand because I don't know any friends that do it. It's like you have to open your horizon because beliefs matter more than anything. What about Java dev? Yes, a Java dev can transition into data engineering. Do you know who? Heard of him? Don't know him personally. Okay. What tools are covered? Let's keep going. So number 12. Again, the most important tools, very simple. SQL, Python, AWS, system design, data modeling, and behavioral questions. And the higher you go into your career, the more the behavioral questions are going to matter more. By the way, this is a big miss I see where it's like a lot of people who are, let's say, 10 years into their career, just like put their head down and lead code for like 5 months, only to realize, oh, wait a second, none of my interview rounds are actually asking me SQL questions. And it's like, yeah, the reason for that is because you now have more experience under your belt. You're going for a more senior role, and you now actually need to show leadership skills, communication skills, behavioral question skills. So when it comes to tools, you need to be able to delineate what's actually important on the interview. Now, data modeling, for example, is one where, yes, you need to understand data modeling concepts, fact tables, dimension tables, right? That kind of stuff. But what's more important is you need to be able to show how you approach a problem on the interview. And so I put this under the tool section because for somebody learning data modeling, they might spend years focusing on this tool or this syntax, right? Or hey, how can I create the perfect script to create the perfect table? And it's like, cool, that's fine. But I've never seen it on the interview. And we've helped over 1,000 people go on the data engineering interview. And we've just never seen that kind of question asked on the data modeling round specifically. And so this is what I'm saying. It's like, you have to rethink how you think about tools because yes, you want to learn everything, but if your goal is to get a job and get a higher paying role, learning can be very expensive if you spend the next 3 years doing it. So that's what I'll say on that one. Okay, let's go to number 13. And this goes with a question that somebody asked, which was how to transition from software support to data engineer. Number 13, I'm going to label it as pay cut. So do you actually need to take a pay cut when you're transitioning from one role to another? And so let's take software support, for example. Well, a software support person, or let's just say a software engineer, or whatever the case is, right? They can do what I like to call up and over. And so what I mean by that is, let's say you have 15 years experience and you're making 130 grand a year and you're a software support person. It's like, great. You will have to transition over to a data engineer. And here's where the magic happens. I learned this while I was at Amazon. If you want to transition into a data engineer, they might say, hey, great, you transitioned into a data engineer. That was your promotion for this year or for these next 2 years, right? Because we all know we only really get promoted every 2 to 3 years, right? The thing is, when you job hop to a different company, you now have the ability, if you have a tech background, right, like such as a software support person, you now have the option to go over and up in one swoop. So now you go from making 130 software support person to making 180 as a data engineer. And the reason I know 180 is very doable is because at the end of the day, you already have 15 years experience and there's people making 500, 600, 700 grand with 15 years experience. And so the reason I'm saying that is because you need to understand what the fastest move from A to B is based on your current situation. Now, here's the thing. If you don't have a tech background, right, like this gentleman who's saying software support, then you probably can't do an up and over, right? You can't go from a cashier to a data engineer and expect up and over. But honestly, even in that situation, you can, because if you're a cashier and you're making 40 grand a year, maybe you can go into tech for the first time as a data analyst or a BIE or whatever and make 70 grand a year. So even in that situation, you're going up and over in a way. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that if you are in tech and you have a ton of years of experience already, then that matters for you to be able to do a swoop and for you to be able to actually go up and over and get the role you want and a higher paying role all at the same time. So let me stop on this treadmill for a second. All right, let's keep going. And just as a reminder, for anybody that has questions, put it in the chat. I'm happy to help. We're trying to do 25 lessons that I learned in 2025 that hopefully is helpful for you. And we are up to number 14. So let's do it. Okay. Number 14 lesson is how long does it really take? So this question to me is interesting because everybody misunderstands how they can move very quickly. And the first question I always ask when I hear how long does it really take is like, cool, well, how many hours are you willing to put in? Because education and self-improvement, like anything, is you get out what you put in. And so, for example, if you're a software engineer and you want to become a data engineer, well, 2 to 4 months of education and then probably 2 to 4 months of actually trying to find a job, so call it 4 to 8 months, is probably expected if you're willing to put in 10 hours a week. And 10 hours a week sounds like nothing until you realize that most of you don't even work out 10 hours a week. Being real, right? Like, yeah, most of you don't even work out 10 hours a week. And so the hardest part I see with people's expectations of how long it takes is that, yes, it can take 4 to 8 months, right? It can take less than that if you're able to put in all those hours per week. But the hardest part is in the very beginning where you have to actually change your patterns, change your habit, right? Because again, if you're not even working out 10 hours a week, why do you think you're all of a sudden going to flip a switch and be able to study for 10 hours a week? And I know you're thinking like, yeah, but I would be able to do it if I paid. Like, totally, I'll be committed. And it's like, yeah. And that goes back to one of my other lessons in the very beginning. If you scroll in the chat, free is expensive. Because if you expect to do and get something for free, you haven't actually committed, which means you're less likely to put in those 10 hours every week, right? Like some of you probably have a gym membership that you haven't even paid for. Being real, right? And so if you 10x the price of your gym membership, do you think you'll go to the gym more? Probably. And so I say this because we just have so much data in the education industry. And when you have all this data, you realize that this question of like, how long does it really take? It's misconstrued because what you're really asking is how quickly can I get this done with the least amount of effort? That's what you're really asking. But the thing is like the effort and you and how much work you do is what actually moves you towards your goal as fast as humanly possible. So just keep that in mind. Okay, lesson number 15. Lesson number 15, we'll talk about leadership. And I'm going to label this as leadership is misunderstood. And the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of times when people think leadership, especially in the tech role, they think Scrum, they think sprints, like, hey, how do I, develop the ability for our engineers to move along and get projects done in a timely manner? And yes, that is part of it, right? You also have to hire, you have to fire, you have to manage, right? You have to do very tough decisions. The thing that I don't think leaders understand, though, is how do you effectively coach people, right? The best leaders are the best coaches. There's a great book called, I think it's called $1 Trillion Coach, if you guys want to read it. And it basically outlines like, hey, if you are a leader, you basically have two attributes. Number one is you're a great coach. Number two is you're a great investor. I'll talk about the first one for a second. If you are a great coach, then what you want to do is you want to be able to give your direct reports the ability to fish, not just give them fish. So, for example, if I have a direct report that comes to me and they're asking me questions and they're like, hey, how we have a problem here. What do you recommend? If I give them my recommendation as to how to solve this problem, I haven't taught them anything. I'm just doing their job. But if you take a step back and you implement what's called a 131, meaning like, cool, we have one problem. I want you, the direct report, to give me three solutions. And now, out of the three solutions, I want you to tell me which one you recommend. Now we're getting a little strategic, right? Because I'm giving them tactics and frameworks as to like, hey, if you can tell me what is it that you're thinking and how are you thinking through this problem, then I can guide you into how I'm thinking and how I would have solved that problem. And so oftentimes we want to be as like parents where we solve the problem for them, but we don't actually uh, help them get better. And this is where we mess up as leaders. And then the second part is leaders are often the best investors. And we have to think about what our currency is. When I say investors, it typically means money, time, and effort, right? And so if I'm a leader and I have to allocate my day, I have 12 hours in the day that I'm working today, and I have to say, well, how can I best utilize my time? It's like, great. For some reason, I said to myself, maybe spending 1 hour of my day today going on a YouTube live is going to be well worth my time. Cool, right? And so being able to allocate resources, and it's not just money, but it's also money, people, effort, time, right? Being able to strategically allocate it is what makes the best leaders because it gives your team the best ROI. And so leadership is very misunderstood because it's not about learning more tech skills and it's not about just, training sprints and leading sprints. It's having these leadership traits and these leadership mindsets and frameworks that you can go back to when you get situations that come up in your day-to-day life as a leader or a manager. All right, number 16, brutal lesson. Legacy stacks hurt. And here's what I mean by that. If you are somebody who's working in SAP, right, and or Informatica, right, and you probably are laughing right now. The truth is, you're stuck. You're stuck, and you probably know this to a subconscious level, and you've been thinking about this more and more recently. And whether this is the first time you're coming to this realization right now, or you're about to in the future, you realize that because of this legacy stack that you're working on, you are stuck. And the thing is, you need to get out of that as soon as possible, because the longer you stay in those legacy stacks, the longer you will be become a dinosaur, and the harder it will be for you to find a job. And again, it goes back to one of the other lessons that I said earlier, which was if you do not make a move because you are scared, then that scareness, that fear, costs you millions of dollars in your career. Millions. If you're in the US, right? If you're somewhere else, then convert the currency. But if you're in the US, it is costing you millions of dollars. And I'm saying millions because the cost of not doing anything is very clear. If you should be making 200 grand and you're only making 100 grand, that's $100,000 difference. The longer you wait, the more you just burn 100 grand every single year. But then over time, it becomes even harder for you to get a role. So you're going to have to upskill for a longer time. And right now, if you're that person that is doing Informatica, whatever the case is, then yes, you are the person that has already lost millions of dollars because you have not upskilled, and you need to take action as soon as possible. You need to find whatever ounce of urgency you have in your body to make a change, because I'm telling you, it is the most expensive thing you could do, which is doing nothing. Okay, let's see. What else can we do here? Um, Lesson number 17. Am I competitive? I'll call it this one. And this is for my tech professionals, right? So the software engineers, the backend engineers, the QAs, wondering like, hey, am I actually competitive with my current skill set to become a data professional? Here's the thing. If somebody came out of college and they had a data engineering certificate or a data engineering degree, then yes, you will not be as competitive as them. Here's the good news. Data engineering certificate or diploma is barely a thing in the universities right now. Barely. It's like someone saying like, hey, I came out with an AI degree in college. It's like, cool. What are the chances you're going to run into somebody like that at the bar? Probably not really existent, right? It's not really a thing. And so the reason I say that is because you are, if you, let's say you're a software engineer or QA and you're like, yeah, but I don't know how I can be competitive. It's like you are creating this figure in your mind saying like, yeah, I can't be competitive against this person. But that figure that you're creating in your mind is barely existing. It's not. Now, again, in 10 years, they might, but I'm talking about in 2026, right? You have this window of time where it's like, this person doesn't exist in your head. Yeah, there's some of them, sure. You might run into them and you'll be terrified, but it's not like if you just had access, let's just say you look at a job online and they have 1,000 people that applied. If you only had access to see those 1,000 resumes like we do, you would immediately understand, oh, the bar is low. The bar is very, very low. They're like half these resumes have typos in it. Seriously. Like, and so what I'm trying to say is like, cool. You're not competitive against that person that does have a data engineering diploma who's absolutely rare. So are you competitive against the next type of people? And it's like, well, the next type of people are the people that have a tech background. It's probably you. Because if you have a tech background, then you can, again, going back to what I said earlier, you can upskill for 2 to 4 months here, and you can try to find a job for 2 to 4 months here. And no, it's not guaranteed. You have to put in work, you have to put in effort. But if you do that, then you are actually the next most competitive person in the market. So congratulations. So are you competitive? Well, if you have a tech background, yes, but you still have to put in the work. You still have to close your gap. Okay, lesson number 18. Do you need a GitHub portfolio? Okay. Yes and no. I think that if you have less than 2 years of experience, you can benefit greatly from it. I think if you have more than 2 years of experience, you barely even need it because the longer and more of a experienced engineer that you are, the more that the recruiters are going to be looking at what you have done. They're going to be looking through your resume, and they don't have the time nor the knowledge. If you think about it, right? Recruiters don't have technical knowledge to actually click on your GitHub portfolio and actually look at everything. I think GitHub portfolios are mostly because a lot of people have sold that you need to do a bunch of projects, buy the course, and then put on the portfolio so that you can actually come across well. Now, again, if it makes you feel better, great, do it. We have projects too. You can do it. You can put our GitHub portfolio, right? It doesn't matter. I'm just telling you what I see in terms of recruiters. They don't have the time to click on every portfolio and every project, and they also don't know the code, so it barely makes a difference to them, right? It's not like a front end project where they get to see how beautiful your website is, blah blah blah. It's like it's not that, right? And so just keep that in mind. I don't think it's as impactful as everybody has told you. Um, 50-50. I know a lot of companies still use Tableau. I know a lot of companies that use Streamlit. At Lyft, we used to use Mode Analytics, and obviously Amazon uses QuickSight. So yeah, again, I wouldn't worry about it because the question you have to ask yourself, man, is are you going to encounter an interview related question on one of those things? Probably not. Is it good for you to know? Yes. But again, remember when I said who are the best leaders? Well, they're the best allocators of resources, they're the best investors, and then the best coaches, right? And so if you have to allocate your time and say, hey, am I really about to spend the next 2 months learning Streamlit and Tableau? Probably not the best use of your time if your goal is to get a data engineering role, right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, number 19. Let's power through, guys. Let's power through. We got 6 more to go. The TPM role, technical program manager, technical product manager, is it a good route to go to? I'll give you the pros, I'll give you the cons, because again, Like most things in life, it's not binary. It's not is it good, is it bad? It's how good or how bad is it? And so for TPM, for those of you that don't know, it is a technical program manager, technical product manager. It stands for somebody who is going to lead projects, push them forward, and work adjacent to tech teams, to engineering teams. You might not necessarily be the engineering manager, but you will be working closely with the engineering team and most likely be a bridge between the engineering team and the team of business stakeholders that are waiting for a project to get shipped by the engineers. And so, is it a good role or a bad role? Well, the questions I often like to ask is, do you want to code? Do you not want to code? And if you don't want to code, then TPM can be a very, very good role for you. You know, now if you do want to code, you should probably explore something like data engineering. Now, the con to a TPM, the cons, right? The negative sides is that it has a lower barrier to entry. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, it means that anybody can try to go for a TPM role, right? Now again, not anybody, because you still need to understand the technical concepts conceptually. And if somebody gives up when trying to learn that stuff, then great, you've already beat them to the punch, right? You've already outperformed them. But it doesn't require as much technical knowledge as like a data engineer or a software engineer. And so these guys have a competitive advantage in their career because not that many people go the distance in learning everything they need to learn. And so again, you'll have you'll have more competition basically. It's not the worst thing in the world, right? Again, if you're good, and again, if you're watching this video, you probably want to be in the top 10, 20, 30% of career professionals, of tech professionals, then you have nothing to worry about. But just know that you might have to adjust your expectations when it comes to like finding a job, because if you are going to go for a TPM role instead of a data engineering role, you might have to add 20, 30, 40% more time to actually land in a role. So while a data engineer person might land a role in 4 to 8 months, a TPM role might take you, 8 to 12, right? So just keep that in mind. It's really just an expectations game, but you should be fine either way. Cool. This one's a favorite of mine. 0 interviews in 100 applications. And so the reason I put this lesson is because people are confused as to what to do at this point. They ask this question, hey, well, I have 0 interviews in 100 applications. Should I keep applying or should I do something different? So I'll give you a rule of thumb that's not perfect, but hopefully this helps. If you have 0 interviews in 20 applications, then keep going. Because 20 applications in, let's just say you apply to those 20 applications in a week, it's A, they can still reply to you. And B, it's not enough data, right? We're all data people. And so we understand, hey, we need statistical significance. 20 is probably not statistically significant. So just keep applying. Now, if you start to approach 50, 60, 70, and you still have 0 applications, I'd probably stop. And because the reason I say this, because I think a 2% conversion is fairly normal. So if you think about 2%, that means you apply to 50 applications and get 1 interview. And so if you're starting to hit that 50, 60, maybe 70 mark and you still don't have an interview and you've applied over a couple weeks, you probably want to slow down. And the constraint there is probably your resume. And I'll tell you what it probably is. It's not even the tools that you have at the top of your resume. It's probably your prior experiences aren't convincing enough that you actually had real world experience to the recruiters, right? And so that's probably the thing that is keeping you from actually getting more interviews. Now, I'll give you the inverse of this, which I kind of briefly touched on before. If you have, let's say, 100 applications and you have 3 interviews, well, now you're at a 3% conversion rate. And so the question becomes, cool, is the simpler answer just to try to optimize it to get you to 4 or 5%? Or should you just apply to 1,000 jobs, meaning 10x your number of applications, and get 30 interviews? You might spend less mental effort just 10xing your number of applications as opposed to trying to tweak your resume to get an actual 1% bump. So just a food for thought there, because I just think that Many people get butthurt basically about having to optimize their resume to try to get it to be perfect and try to get a 50% conversion rate. I don't think it's the year 2005 anymore. I don't think the days where you send out 10 applications and get 5 interviews, I think is very, very rare now. And so you have to adjust as the market has adjusted as well. Um, okay, let's do this one. DA versus DE. You're not sure if you want to be a data analyst or a data engineer. Which one should you do? Again, I'm going to stick with the same theme of become overqualified. And so what I mean by that is you should learn everything you need to learn for a data engineer, because as a data engineer, you will have the skills of a data analyst and a BIE, by the way, a business intelligence engineer, which is somewhere in the middle. And so you can basically be a data engineer, learn one thing, and then have accumulated two or three other job titles, the skills for two or three other job titles below, and you can just go and do one of those jobs. And so I think if you think about like how to efficiently study, that is basically the advice I'm trying to give you there, because that is how you can then go and apply to four different jobs when the time comes for you to apply. And now all of a sudden it's like, cool, I just did one piece of studying and now I qualify to apply for four different things. And so don't be scared to get creative with how you approach studying. It's a lot of work up front to figure this out, but then it saves you months and months of pain down the road. So just keep that in mind. Cool. Do we need real world projects? Um, I think this is a great question because I think, and again, I think Coursera and Udemy have their place, but I think unless you can understand how these tools and projects are used in the real world, I think it will never really get retained in your brain. So I'll give you an example. I have an American Express card. When I use Amex, if I understand, oh, I just got an alert at 2 in the morning because they think my card is being used by a robber or something, right? Or got stolen, then great. I understand what real time streaming is. I understand what Kafka or Kinesis is. So now in my brain, I know what the proper use case for these tools are with something that I understand and use in the real world, like an American Express card. But if you only learn Kinesis and Kafka in real time streaming and you learn it all conceptually, it's like, well, it might not retain in your brain, right? And so the analogy I like to use is like, cool, what do you think is gonna retain in your brain when it comes to learning? Is it gonna be you sit in the classroom and learn how to build a house, or you just go out and have somebody show you how to build a house, and then you're actually the person like hammering all the nails along the side of the house? And it's probably this one, right? It's probably you actively going about and building a house. And so the reason I say this is because do you need real world projects? You don't need it, but I think it is effectively like it is emphatically more effective way of learning. And I think if you have the option to use those, I think you should use those from a learning retention standpoint. Ooh, I like this one. Okay. Another brutal lesson: pay or title. I cannot tell you how many people show up and they say, "Hey, I want to be a director of data, or I want to be a VP of data," and they have 20 years experience and they're only making like 120. And again, I was making almost 500 grand a year, making with 5 years experience. And so immediately the question I asked them is like, "Cool, bro. Do you care more about the title or do you care more about the pay?" And 99% of the time, it's I care more about the pay. And I'm like, "Cool. So get this title, this leveling, thing in your head where you're like, I need to be a senior. I need to have the VP in the title." It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. If you can get a junior level role and make two or three times more than what you're making right now, then who cares? Who cares? I'm a big fan of optimizing for the money, because I think once you optimize for the money and you're less stressed in your real life, then you can go out and focus on, hey, now I'm going to go get leadership skills. Now I'm going to learn how to, implement AI. Now I'm going to learn how to be really good at my job so I can get promoted, or start being at least mentors to mentees and start interviewing and start picking up different skill sets. And so I'm a big fan of like like just be honest about what you actually want and just say it out loud. You know, don't focus so much on the status of the job title because nobody cares and it doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, if you think having that VP title on your resume is going to help you get that next role, it's not. It's really, really not. It's your interview skills that are going to get you the next role. It's like at the end of the day, no one looked at the resume and be like, "This is a really good resume. I'm going to hire you right away." That's not how it works. They're still going to interview you. So be good at interviewing. I'm telling you. By the way, I'm not a fan. I'm not happy that that's how the game is played. I'm just telling you how the game is played. And so that brings me to lesson number 4, which is interviewing is the game. Look, if you're a tech professional and you can probably resonate with this, right? You've done a lot of leak code only to never do a lot of leak code ever again, right? So you get it. You study 6 months for leak code questions just to spend 1 hour on the interview doing it. And once you get a job, you never do it again. And that's how the game goes. Is it right? Is it good? Is it effective? Is it efficient? It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is I'm trying to be a realist and say, hey, this is how you get hired. So that's how you play the game. So that's what you should prepare for. And I can't tell you how many people come to us and they're like, hey, this is dumb that is that way. And I'm like, I know. If I got a leak code question, I'd use Google or ChatGPT. But if they don't let you use that on the interview, and to my knowledge, they haven't let you use that in the interview, then play the game. Because if you want to hire a paying data role, then just play the game because that's how the game is played. Don't bitch about the game, just play the game. Okay, lesson number 25 to round out the 25 lessons of 2025. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to finish this one off in a bang. So, look, is AI going to take over data engineering? It's going to have an impact. It doesn't mean it's going to replace it. And so I'll give you the best analogy I've given, which is that of a crane. Okay, so you have a building, right? And you were building buildings before, and then somebody invented a crane, and now you have a tool in which you can use to build a building faster. Should you use it? Absolutely. Why not? You can get your job done faster and more efficiently. Does it mean it's going to replace architects and construction workers? No, it might reduce the number of people that they need to build a building, right? But guess what? It also means they can then use those people and hire more construction workers and more architects to build more buildings. So in fact, cranes actually created jobs. And here's the thing. The person that is not a construction worker and the person that is not an architect, they still can't use a crane. So the person that doesn't know how to code and that doesn't know data engineering fundamentals, you don't need to be worried about them because they probably can't use AI to outcompete you in that situation. You still know more than them, right? If a company's going to hire somebody to run the crane, it might as well be the person that knows what they're doing, not somebody who is just like, oh, I want to learn this crane stuff. So yes, cranes will have impact, or AI will have impact on data engineering, but it's actually the data engineering and the tech professionals that are going to benefit the most from it. And so it's like the guy from NVIDIA, right? Jensen Huang said, it's like AI won't take people's jobs. The guy who knows how to use AI will take people's jobs. And so learn AI, learn Gen AI, learn AI and data engineering. But at the end of the day, stop thinking like you shouldn't do anything because AI might take over your job anyways. That's you giving up and that's you making excuses. Go take action. And I hope you got some value from this stream. And I will see you and wish you nothing but the best. And if you liked what you saw here and want to see more streams, write in the comment section of what you might want to hear me talk about, and click on the link below so you can schedule a call with my team if you want any personalized help. All right, cheers and go enjoy your weekend. Thank you guys.